Episode 81, 14 National Championships and Counting, Navarro College cheerleading head coach, Monica Aldama. Welcome to The Art of Excellence, a show about people doing extraordinary things in their lives. I'm your host, Glenn Zweig. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Monica Aldama. Monica is the cheerleading coach in Navarro College. She's one of the most successful athletic coaches in the country, having led Navarro to 14 national championships. She and her team are the subject of a hit Netflix show called Cheer, which is now entering its second season. She has a new book out, which is entitled Full Out: Lessons in Life and Leadership from America's Favorite Coach. Well, Monica, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So season 2 of Cheer just came out, I think like last week, right?
Yes, it came out last week. Have you had a chance to watch it yet?
I watched season 1, have not watched any of season 2 yet. I was curious if you had seen the finished product, or if you're like watching it for the first time that we all watch it.
I get it a few days before, so not too much, sooner than everyone else, but I do get to see it a couple of days before it's actually released.
You don't have access to the editing room, right? Like it's sort of like you lose creative control to some degree, yeah.
For sure. No, I have no control of how the show is edited. And they actually send it out to screeners, like they do screeners before I even get to see it. So, a lot of the media gets to screen it. And of course, they have like an embargo where they can't actually write about it until a certain date.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm assuming the first season must have been, overall pretty positive experience, or there wouldn't have been a second one. And of course, those that don't know, I believe it won like 4 Emmys. So an incredible success from that perspective. But was sort of curious, I know they approached you, but why did you decide to do it?
I'm definitely a very private person. So I never thought that I would want to put myself out there on display for the world to see. But I never also knew what the other side of that looked like. I never knew what being in the public eye was like. So I didn't I didn't have a warning about how the good and the bad, the ugly, of it. And so I just really more so was just really proud of my program. And I thought, I knew like that the way we represent our program is great, in my opinion. And that I, thought that it would be a great opportunity to show how athletic these kids are, their grit, their determination, work ethic, all of these things that we've worked so hard to create within this family. So when I saw that the school, was welcome to have this discussion, I thought, well, maybe this is something that we should do. And they ended up flying out to film us for a couple of days in 2018 and to see if we were a good fit for them and they were a good fit for us. And, Greg Whiteley, the creator of the show, he makes you feel like, that you can trust them, that, this is going to be a great relationship. And so, that's really what I was definitely not wanting to do it because I, like to put myself out there. It was more so I just was proud of the program. And of course, it is cheerleading. So I thought there's a stereotype with cheerleading. So I really didn't think anybody would watch it except people in the cheer community. So we had no idea that this show was going to be so big and that basically the whole world would watch it.
Well, let me just ask you though, and I'm going to be really level with you. Before watching the show, I honestly had no clue what cheerleading was all about. I just assumed it's what we see on the sidelines during basketball and football games, the pom-poms, and the megaphones and this sort of thing. So for those out there who have not seen the show and are clueless like I was, can you explain what, the world of competitive cheerleading is all about?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a stereotype, and it really comes from, you know, the history of cheerleading really did used to be more sideline cheerleading. That's how it developed.
Hmm.
And I think, you know, back when I was in school, part of cheerleading tryouts was popular vote by the, you know, you tried out in front of the school. That was part of it. So I can see how it evolved, you know, or it started back with that kind of, you know, stereotype. What happened was in the very late 80s, early 90s, all-star cheerleading was created, which is basically like club cheerleading, like if you have club baseball or where you travel and have a travel team. And these kids started learning cheerleading from, you know, basically birth and having opportunities to compete. And so competitive cheerleading really grew over the past 20, 30 years. And it's tumbling, it's partner stunts. And I know I'm probably talking if you've not ever seen it, you don't really understand either, but it's a very athletic. I mean,
It's like it's gymnastics. I mean, when I watch these people, it's like they could be sitting there, competing,
correct.
maybe not at the Olympic level, but being able to manipulate your body like that.
For
And
sure. Definitely a big part of gymnastics. And then, you know, like acro type stuff where we're actually holding people up and throwing people around. And, you know, Greg Whiteley, the creator of the show, said that we were some of the toughest athletes he had ever filmed, which is a huge compliment because he does a lot of sports. And I don't even think the crew, when they came in at first, had a clue what they were walking into. You know, they were shocked to say the least at, you know, this front row view of watching this. I mean, they had some interest in it, I think, from watching, from what they told me, the cheerleaders on the sidelines of the Last Chance U, when they were actually filming football, they went into like a cheer practice and they were like, oh, this is interesting, this is different than what we thought. And they started researching, you know, teams that were successful. And so, you know, I think what they thought they were going to film was way different than what they actually got. They were quite surprised at really truly how difficult and how athletic it was. But the goal is for us to do a lot of really hard stuff and to make it look easy and entertaining. And it takes a lot of hours of practice to get to that point. So hopefully if you go watch some videos, it will be entertaining and not look like we're struggling too much, but just know that there were many, many, many hours put in to get to that point.
yeah, and we'll come back to that. But before we get into coaching and what you do with these kids, just wanted to roll the tape back on you and your early years and this school Navarro. This is in a small town called. Do you pronounce it Corsicana?
Yeah. Corsicana, Texas.
And that's where you were raised. I think it has like about 24,000
Mm-hmm.
people. I assume it hasn't changed all that much since your days. So, what was that like for you, Monica, growing up in a small town like that?
I think my perspective is different now, but growing up in a small town, I mean, you know everybody, you feel like you know everybody. You have your close, you know, group of friends that I'm still friends with to this day.
Hmm.
You know, you can't get into too much trouble because someone's going to tell your parents type
Hmm.
thing. I mean, I think there's a lot of great things about a small town that I didn't appreciate when I was younger that I certainly do appreciate now. But yeah, I mean, you know, the school was just big enough, but not too big. And everybody took care of everyone. And of course, times were way different back when I was younger, but
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah. I got a sense from the book that you inherited maybe a lot of your work ethic and discipline from your father. So, was curious what he was like and maybe what role your mother played.
yeah, I mean, you know, I grew up in a typical, I would say, I get, you know, I knew nothing other than my middle class family that I grew up in. And my dad, you know, was a hard worker and had high expectations for
Hmm.
us. And I definitely think I'm a lot like him in that manner. You know, not that I'm the fun ruiner of the group, but I am very much more on the business side of things. And let's make sure we're doing this, and this before we go and, you know, have too much fun. But, you know, he just had high expectations for us. And he was a great role model as far as, you know, always working hard to provide for his family. And, he was at everything that I ever did, though, at the same time. I mean, he did travel a lot as I got older because of his job responsibilities, but at the end of the day, I don't remember a game that he wasn't at that I was cheering at or anything like that. So he was really our number one supporter and the hardest worker that I knew, and my mom, the same. She owned her own business and I can't complain. I had a great experience growing up.
And so you were into cheerleading yourself, and then you actually, I believe, started cheering at a junior college before you then transferred to University of Texas to
Yes.
get your degree. And so I was curious, and I know it was perhaps a little bit fortuitous how you ended up back at Navarro, but putting that aside, was there something about that junior college experience that made you want to return to that environment at some point?
No, no. Like I said, I never thought in a million years I would be in the cheerleading world today or coach. I love cheerleading. Obviously, I'm still here. It is something that if you do, it just really it sucks you in. There's such a passion with competing and what we do in cheerleading. So I loved it so much. But I was, like I said, I had big dreams. So it was never something that I was going to stay in. It just by coincidence, here I am 27 years later in the cheerleading world. I don't know how that happened.
So I want to talk about this dream you had, which you wanted to escape the small town life that you had. And the dream was to get some glamorous finance job on Wall Street.
Yep.
And you certainly had the drive to do it. You certainly had the smarts to do it. That's for sure. But something clearly happened along the way. So what happened?
Yeah. So I graduated college a semester early and married, of course, my high school sweetheart. And we moved to Dallas because we were going to get out of the small town. So we moved to Dallas and we both, got just the first job really offered to us, just to get on our feet and be able to support ourselves. And of course, it was not that where I was working, it was not a job that, I was going to stay in by any means. It was a job to pay the bills until I figured out what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And a high school friend of mine whose mom was my high school cheer coach, he was an assistant baseball coach at Navarro. And he called me one day because, of course, this is before texting. He called me one day and he said, "Hey, our cheerleading coach is leaving. You should come apply for this job." And, I was like, apply for this job, cheerleading coach. But I wasn't happy where I was. And I thought, I mean, all of my family's there. I could apply. What's it going to hurt to apply? And of course I did. And I got offered the job. And so I took it thinking, of course, this will give me some time to figure out, what do we want to do with our future? Are we going
it was just like a holding pattern. That wasn't really meant to be your career at that point.
Correct. Of course, this program had not ever won, but I'm very competitive. So I was like, let's get straight to business. What do we need to do to start building this program? And, so I started doing that. We had 14 people on the team at the time. And so, I had never coached before. So I was learning, I was trying to do everything that I could do to learn about coaching and what I should be doing to get the team where I wanted them to. And of course, I used my business background as far as I'm very much a numbers person. So I kind of started of like, how do we win a national championship? Well, we get the highest score. Well, how do we get the highest score? Well, let me look at the score sheet. Mm-hmm. So I need to get, I started analyzing the score sheet and how we could maximize our points here and there. And I just kind of worked backwards. And I took the talent that I had, which was not, the most talented team, but I tried to manipulate that talent to like score the highest in every category. And, it worked. I won my first national championship in 2000. And I started here in the spring of 95.
So 5 years to get your national championship. That's amazing.
Yeah.
What I want to sort of decouple the part of the job that's about recruiting, acquiring that talent. And then of course there's what do you do with the talent? So just to start with, how much does raw talent play into this? And so I'm thinking, like, I'm a Duke alum, so I think of obviously the big time recruiting that Coach K does, right? So is this as much of a recruiting battle as it is in those sports, and that, sort of half the battle is just getting the right talent, or does it play a lesser role?
Oh no, recruiting is huge. I mean, you want, especially, I mean, it's evolved, so it's so different now than it was when I first started, but it's just, the talent is so incredible now because of, all-star cheerleading and the way these kids have grown up. I mean, I definitely don't think you ever have to be the most talented team. I think it's a lot of strategy and preparation, but you definitely still need the talent, to get there. And with us, our biggest competitor is right down the road. So it's always a battle, competing for those recruits. But obviously, the more you win, it does get a little bit easier to recruit.
Hmm.
So it's way different now than it was back when I first started, and I was, giving my best pitch of what we had to offer, which, it's not like we have the big game day experience or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, you have to get the right talent, and the good thing is we do have a lot of success behind our name, and so we do have, competitive kids that want to come and compete at this level at this program. So it definitely has gotten easier over the years. But like I said, you don't always have to have the most talented team. It does come down to strategy and preparation, but you do need the talent. You do need talent.
Right, right. You can correct me if I'm going too far on a limb here, but I'm guessing, when you start out and you sort of don't know what you're doing, you certainly do know what talent looks like. You've been a cheerleader yourself, right?
Of course.
You can look at someone's skills, but I know, over time that there's been a fair number of false negatives, if you will. So kids that, look fantastic, but then either quit or they're forced out of the program for whatever reason. And so I'm thinking maybe that, if you started out just looking at sort of raw skills on a mat, that maybe over time you've learned that there are other attributes that come into play here. And if that's true, maybe you could share some of, like, how have you learned to adjust, your screen, if you will, your filter for what makes for, a good Navarro cheerleader?
You don't always know. I mean, I've definitely had some red flags in the tryout process that have made me say no to some very talented people, whether it's their social media or maybe a reference from a coach and, a previous coach. But, I have a much larger team now. So I have some room for a lack of a better term, weeding out, the ones that are not really right for the program, which happens. I mean, that definitely happens. I mean, there's been years that every single person that made the team, was on the team at the end of the season, which was great. We didn't lose anybody for grades or getting into trouble or just not a good fit. But then there's also, times that I've taken people that I thought were going to be the biggest asset to the team,
Mm-hmm.
and they ended up bringing nothing because their work ethic wasn't what I thought it was going to be, or they weren't really, sometimes you just don't know till you get into it, And so if there's not a red flag at the beginning, then you don't really know until you start working. And it definitely every year is interesting how some of those that you thought were going to be great are not necessarily great. And some of those that you really just took, end up being your stars. And so I definitely have always been someone that likes to give people an opportunity when I see a little bit of potential. So I always take people based on potential. And
Hmm.
sometimes it works out and sometimes they just are kind of there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because you have to judge things they haven't done before, and who can. And
Correct.
you also talk about, the importance of cultivating a championship culture, and not everyone thrives in that kind of environment. So, could you share what is a championship culture? What does that look like, and who are the people that maybe tend to not be the right fit for that kind of environment?
Yeah, well, you definitely have to buy into the program and have that work ethic and resilience when you're talking about a championship level program. It
Mhm.
does require a lot more than just your average person that's there to just enjoy the moment. It's,
Mhm.
buying in 100%. and being a good teammate and being a good leader for the program. It requires sacrificing your personal time. It requires stepping up and having expectations for yourself in your personal life, or, social media, all those things that represent the program. And, the work ethic, like I said, we work really, really hard. It seems glamorous, I think, from the outside looking at it. It's always inviting to want to be a part of that program that's successful. But what people don't understand is it's a lot of hours and commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And to get to where we are, and not everybody's built for that. Most every single person that comes through this program, they are built for that they don't they don't make the team usually unless they're built for that. But there's always that possibility that someone's attitude or they're uncoachable. They can definitely be the bad apple that kind of affects that championship culture. So it's very important as the coach to keep your eyes open, and that's where you might lose some people. I mean, I've gotten rid of some, sometimes the most talented person on the team because it was affecting our culture. It was affecting our experience at practice.
Like someone's attitude.
Mostly attitude, just when you're not a team player. And, it really comes down to a lot of things, whether it's the way that you interact with your team, your body language, your communication skills. When it becomes to where practice is not fun, not that it's fun working your tail off all the time, but when it becomes not a good environment that you don't really enjoy being in, then we have a problem. And that usually comes down to one person that's kind of creating that. And like I said, I've gotten rid of, in years past, the most talented person on the team because they were creating a really bad environment, and it was affecting our culture. So it's very important to have the right people when it comes to being coachable and being good teammates, because that can definitely bring you down really fast.
Yeah, what sort of opened my eyes a bit was that there's a fair number of these kids that come from broken homes, if that's fair. And the program that you provide, it seems to be as much about, structure and discipline as it is, winning the competitions. And it's providing this structure and discipline that they probably didn't have, growing up. And almost like you're a parent as much as a coach to some of these kids. Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I learned pretty quickly. I was very naive when I started. I just loved cheerleading. I learned very quickly that my role as a coach was really wearing many, many hats. I was their advisor, their counselor, their mother figure, their disciplinarian, their coach, their, shoulder to cry on if they were going through a really bad time. So I didn't realize, because like I said, I'd never coached and I was really young, and I was pretty self-sufficient as far as like handling my own business and not really needing too much from anybody. And then I realized, no, there's a lot of people that need a lot from you, and coaching is a 24/7 job. Like I need to be available at all times. And so I started off like studying a score sheet. Then I realized, okay, wait, I need to be more educated on everything, like how to handle these different situations and what's the best, a way to approach this or that, or how can I, like I said, I came from a pretty great middle class family. So I didn't experience myself some of the trauma that these kids had experienced. So I was learning as I was going how to like be the best person, whether it's stability, structure, or whatever they needed, and I learned pretty quickly that everybody needs something different. I can't coach everyone the same. I can't, I'm a very black and white person. I like to tell it how it is, but at the same time, some people need a little softer approach Some people need a more stern approach. So I was really learning a lot as I was going, and it's really about people and relationships. And I was looking at score sheets, which it is still about score sheets, obviously, when you're trying to win, but it's so much more than that. And so, I've learned a lot over the past 27 years.
Yeah, I want to come back to this point about communication. As you say, not everyone responds to the same kind of coaching, and being direct with critical feedback may be exactly what one kid needs, right, to send the message home. And that very same message and that same style is going to be what crushes the self confidence of another kid and
Mm-hmm.
makes them feel just terrible about themselves. And so, given that you had come from having a much more direct communication style, that must have been a bit of a learning curve for you. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And the good thing is I have always been very open to like what can I do to be better. And so I would listen to the feedback that I was getting, or I would analyze someone after having a conversation with them, and think maybe I was a little too harsh the way I said that. Let me go back and have another conversation with them and make sure that they know that I believe in them, or whatever. And it really took a lot of failures, and but me being open to knowing that, like, me watching and going, maybe I didn't quite do that right, let me try that again and go back and have another conversation. I think that's one of the biggest things about being successful, or getting to where you want to be, is making sure you're focusing on you and what you need to do better. Because I think, especially like right now in this day and age, it's kind of wild. I don't know if it's because of the internet or what. I don't know what's happening, but I feel like everybody wants to blame everybody else for everything. Like, I don't see a lot of self accountability and or open ears to listen and like actually listen to other people's opinions and thoughts and stuff like that. And so I've always been very open to what did I bring to the table that needs to be better.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one of the reasons that I've gotten to where I am today, because I do analyze. Like, I might tell you something, then I'm like looking at your body language and thinking, did I say that too harsh? Let me go back and have another conversation and make sure they know that this is what I meant, and I still believe in you, and this is just what we need to work on. And am I perfect? No. Am I every year I'm like, what could I have done better? So I think if we all just kind of stay in that mind of like growth and learning and doing better ourselves, we can definitely get to a much better place.
So, what if you look at what 14 national championships?
Mm-hmm.
What do you attribute that to? And I need something more than I know you're competitive, but I have to imagine if I interview every cheerleading coach or any sports coach at any program, you're going to hear a certain amount of, fire in the belly and competitiveness and desire to win. So that's pretty universal, but clearly you've cracked the code somehow. What do you think it is?
Well, I go back to definitely educating myself on what I feel like is the success to the score sheet. But then also, I feel like I personally have worked so hard to be such a good role model for my team that, in my own personal life, if I expect something of them, I expect it of myself, and,
Mm-hmm.
on even a bigger level. And so I think just the fact that I've earned their respect based on my own actions and the way that I carry myself, they are very bought into the program, and they want to make me proud of them. And they come in and they work hard, and they believe in me. They believe in, they trust the process, of how we have gotten the program and the way that we practice and prepare for competition. So like I said, I mean, obviously my experience and preparation, I feel like, is great, the way that we prepare, but the buy-in of the team is so important. And that culture that we've created, where everyone wants to come in and work so hard and fight for the same thing. And I think that just comes from them having respect for me. I don't think respect can ever be demanded. It is earned, and I try really hard to earn their respect on a daily basis based on the way that I coach them, the way that I talk to them, I treat them, I mean, a lot of times you think coaches yell a lot. I really don't yell that much at all. If I want to have a conversation with someone about something I think they need to work on, I usually pull them to the side. I try to be very respectful. And I think that they respect me and we all have this mutual goal and love for each other.
Yeah. One of the challenges, you have, of course, isn't just assembling the 20 kids that are going to represent the team in the big championships, but that means there's a certain number of kids that aren't going to be competing. And, you have to find some way for them to still be part of the team and preserve their egos, which I'm sure have been somewhat, crushed by not making that sort of first team squad, if you will.
Yeah.
So you have this thing you call, I don't know if this is just you or if it's universal in the sport, but, called mat talk, where they're on the sidelines, but they play this very important role of, cheering on
Yeah.
the cheerleaders, if you will. Can you talk more about that and your philosophy around that?
Yeah. I mean, I mat talk myself every day, like just to get through some really tough times, but which is just speaking positive thoughts to myself and encouraging myself. But as far as like in cheerleading, like we're actually physically yelling as they're performing, like it could be the silliest of words. It could be, let's go. It could be whatever. It could be a personal, like a, they get very much into their rhythm of like, they yell the same thing at the same time to one person here or one person there. And, it's almost like they depend on that. They need to hear that person yelling at them because it gives them that little confidence, but also it's exhausting to do a routine. So when you have that energy coming off of the side of the mat onto you, it's almost like you can feel it and it gives you that little extra boost that you need to make it through the routine. So when we're going full out, yeah, I mean, a silent gym is difficult to perform in. So that energy that anyone that's watching gives is so important. And when we actually get to that point in the season where we're going full out, anyone that's not on the mat, they realize that that is a very important part of their responsibility. But I also try to include them in like, even like, hey, y'all watch this. Do you like the way this looks or do y'all think, just to feel like we're all, I mean, I'm not physically out there on the mat, but I feel very much like I've earned that national championship if we win because of what, I brought. And I want everyone to feel like they've brought something to the routine, whether they're physically on the mat, they're mat talking on the side, or they're another set of eyes to look for, should we change this? Does this look good? Did someone make a mistake? Or, whatever it is, just to feel like we're all a part of what it is that we're creating.
So I'm curious what success looks like for you if you don't win a national championship.
Well, I always feel awful if we don't win simply for the kids. I mean, I've said it before, but like I don't have to prove it to myself anymore.
Mhm.
I'm here because I still love this program and I'm still passionate about what I have to offer to the kids. So success for me is when I have people call me 5 years after they left and they're like, remember that thing you used to say? It really got me through the day to day, or, I just want you to know I got this promotion, or they know that I'm going to be proud. And that still is something that they want to do, is make me proud, because of the relationship we built. That's the success for me, is to give these kids something that they can take beyond cheerleading, set them up for success, whether it's teaching them that, hey, you have to be accountable for your actions. Like if you don't show up for work, who's going to take your spot? Someone's going to have to not do what they wanted to do to cover because, you or whatever the situation is, or like,
Mhm.
own up to what you brought to the table, or, show up when you're not 100%, because you can't just come the days you're 100%. That might be 50 days out of the year, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, it comes back to that structure and discipline you
Yeah.
provide, right? Which they keep with them
Mm-hmm.
for their lifetimes, right?
That's the goal. And, and it does, like, I have so many people that will call me and just tell me about something going on in their life, or just thank me for putting up with them. They're thinking back about it. So I mean, really, that's where the success is for me. Obviously, I want to win. I want to win badly for these kids because we work really hard throughout the year. But I think also when you don't win, there's a lot of lessons to be learned there too. It teaches you your resilience and a lot of things, and it makes you work harder. Nothing makes me work harder than losing. So, I think there's a lot of lessons and success that can be found throughout the year, whether you win or lose.
So I want to switch gears for a minute. There was something you did that you shared in the book that I really, really admire about you. And it was, well, there's a lot of things I admire about you, but this was something outside of being a coach. And it's when you had stood up to your pastor for not openly accepting gay marriage. And you didn't just have a conversation with him, but you posted reviews and social media, and you did confront him, and you pointed out what you felt. And I'm summarizing here that, his antiquated views that marginalize the LGBTQ community. That this is very hurtful and harmful. Can you share some of that story?
I love to take the kids to church with me if they want to come, especially if someone asks, like, hey, I think I want to go to church. And I just started feeling a little, not comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
If I brought, I didn't know what was going to be said. And, I mean, most of the sermons were great. Like I love that pastor,
Mm-hmm.
but after that, it was just really heavy on my heart. And my husband, I think, was angrier than me. And we just talked about it and we said, I think we just need to start looking at other places. And
Well, you have some kids on the program that are gay.
oh yeah, a lot of kids on the program, and some of them, wanting to go to church and like,
Mm-hmm.
where should I go? And I'm like wanting them to come with me, but then not feeling 100% comfortable in that decision so it was heavy on my heart. And after that sermon, my pastor reached out to me, and it was a tough conversation. I cried, he cried, but I wasn't going to not tell him how I felt about it. And I felt like I had raised no telling how many gay kids over since I've been coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had deep conversations with these kids, like very deep, heartfelt conversations. And I felt like if anyone was going to talk to him about gay people, that I was the one that needed to be that person. And because have you even ever had a conversation with anybody that's gay? I mean, I'm like, so I was very passionate about it, and he knows that. And we just basically ended the conversation on like, we're just going to agree to disagree and move forward from there. And then my husband and I said, we need to feel comfortable where we're at. And so, we decided to switch churches and have felt great about that decision ever since.
Again, kudos to you for standing up for your convictions, and doing so in a very public way like that. Another non sequitur here, but I wanted to talk about mental health just for a minute, because it feels like it's finally having its moment in sports. You've got these high profile athletes like Simone Biles, Naomi Osaka, walking away, or at least taking a pause from competition to take care of themselves first and foremost. So I was curious to hear your perspective on all of this that's happening.
Yeah, I think it's very important. And I think I definitely have over the years realized that the mental health aspect of this, I need to do things differently or have different conversations or make sure I'm putting that at the forefront of my mind when it comes to practices. And like I said, that dealing with, like, oh, wait, this person is going through a really bad breakup right now. Like, let me be there for them in a different way too. Maybe they need to not be pushed as hard right now in practice because they're dealing with something else, or, there's just so many aspects to it. And I think the more we're educated, the better we're all going to be and create a better environment for our athletes, whether it's cheerleading or football or whatever it is. And, the only way you do better and get better is to make sure you're educated and you're open to listening. And when we are able to talk about these things and we're learning about how to have a better culture for mental health, then we can grow and get to a better place. Once again, that comes down to making sure you're open to evolving and improving and knowing what you need to do better, and not, looking at what everybody else is doing that's not right.
Yeah. Well, it seems like part of this stems from just, having these extraordinarily high expectations on ourselves. And one of the things that you do as a coach, which I found really interesting, is you're not just okay with failure, but you actually encourage it. Like seems to be an important part of your coaching philosophy. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody was kind of intrigued with the statement I made back in season one, like, keep going until you get it right, and then keep going until you can't get it wrong. And for practice, for example, if we do it right every time, then when we go out there and actually it counts and we're performing and competing, we don't know how to handle it when it goes wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, you need things to mess up so you can learn how to deal with those situations, whether we're talking about a routine and how to handle the not so great grips or the not so great landing, or to make it through. If you don't practice that, if you don't fight through those, and if you don't check yourself in by not always hitting it, or whatever, then you get complacent. You're not prepared for when it goes wrong. Same thing with life though. Like, the biggest moments of my growth have been when I've made mistakes and when I failed at something. So, I feel like if you don't fail, that you don't grow and you get complacent.
Was there a particular failure of yours that you look back on that was the biggest growth experience for you?
I mean, I guess maybe my divorce, because it was very much a time where I really self-reflected and really wanted to dig in and work on myself. I wasn't blaming my husband. I wasn't blaming anybody else. All I wanted to do was make myself a better person, a better wife, a better friend, a better mother. I really took the time to dig down deep and try to work on myself. And I think, like I said, whether it's failing and with your marriage or not winning a competition, there's growth in failure.
Well, I guess the bad news about creating the dynasty that you've created, I imagine you've become somewhat a victim of your own success, if that makes sense. Just as Duke basketball or Alabama football, I could give 1,000 other examples, right? I mean, the expectations are nothing shy of a national championship because you've done it so many times.
Yeah.
That's a tremendous amount of pressure. And do you thrive under that pressure? Do you like that pressure? Does it ever become overwhelming for you?
I hate that pressure, but I walk right through it. Like it is hard because I think it takes away from what you have put in to have that success. If it's, I mean, people do that all the time. They go, "Oh, y'all going to win this year?" They'll see me on campus. "Y'all going to win this year?"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, I mean, we are working super hard. We're putting the hours in. We are definitely putting our best foot forward. But I mean, you're never guaranteed to win, no matter how great you are, you're never, if you could be the best football team in the country and have that one bad game, yeah, it definitely, you're a victim to that. When you're successful, a lot of people start hating you because they don't like for people to win over and over and over. We see that in all sports. Nobody wants Alabama to win except Alabama fans. I mean, yeah, when people are like, "Oh, y'all going to win," as if it's that easy, it almost sometimes feels like it's taken for granted. They don't understand actually how hard it is to win. And I've dealt with that for quite some time now, so I'm kind of used to it and I don't let it affect me too badly. But it is a lot of pressure because I don't like to disappoint people. And I feel like, oh, if we don't win, we're going to disappoint everyone because they expect us to win. Luckily, I'm still going. I'm still working under that pressure. I haven't given up on it yet. I mean, at some point, I mean, like I said, I'm no longer here to prove that I'm a great coach or anything like that. So I'm just here for the kids right now and this family that I've created. And you take the good, you take the bad.
Yeah. Well, speaking of pressure, you, I guess, wanted to take more on because you accepted this invitation to be on Dancing with the Stars, which, I mean, I'm sure it was quite an adventure, but a crazy amount of work and preparation and time commitment. Was that overall a really good experience for you?
Um, it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And I would do it again because once again, getting out of your comfort zone is growth. You know, you learn things about yourself. I've been a fan of that show since the very first season. So it was a dream come true to even be asked to do it. It was terrifying to be on national TV doing something
Uh-huh.
that I'd never done before in my life. And I'm already hard on myself. And then I think, a lot of people thought, oh, she's a cheerleading coach, has a cheerleading background. This will be easy for her, but it's completely different. So it wasn't easy at all. And, it was physically and mentally tough.
So you like to get out of your comfort zone. You like to be pushed in that way. So it seems.
I don't enjoy it at the moment. It's just like when you go run a few miles, it's not
Yeah.
really fun, but
Yeah.
afterwards you're like, okay, that was probably good for me.
You're better for the experience.
Yeah.
Monica, the name of this podcast is The Art of Excellence. And I always end the show asking my guests what they think of when they think of that word excellence. What does it mean to you?
Excellence to me is, oh goodness, I think carrying yourself in the way of a champion in all areas of your life. So being that leader by leading by example, I think is the start of excellence and really working on yourself. If that's a good answer, I don't know, but
It's your answer. And your answer is a good answer, and I like it. I've enjoyed every bit of this interview. I admire not just, of course, what you've done with this program, but what you've done with these kids. You're providing something way more than the ability to tumble on a mat.
yeah.
You're giving them life skills that they may not have had otherwise. And clearly from, having these ongoing relationships over the years and years with them, that's a tremendous impact. I know how busy you are and you're promoting the next season of the show and you've got your team, but thank you so much for spending time with me. Really, really enjoyed it, Monica.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for listening. Okay, don't go yet, please. 2 favors. I ask simply 2 favors. One, if you could please download the iTunes app. You could do it on your phone. You can do it on the computer. Take 60 seconds and leave a review. It means a lot. 2, you can find my episodes on several social media sites, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Find the one that you like the most. Find the one where you tend to have a lot of friends and followers. And if you could please either share it in the case of Facebook and LinkedIn, or retweet it on Twitter, that would mean the world to me. So those are the 2 asks I have. I love putting together this podcast. I hope you enjoy listening to it. Thank you so much, and I will see you again next time. Bye-bye.